live show at a pre-season game once before Stu realised he hadn't pressed the button to actually go live. We were 10 minutes into the show.
Amazing. Anyone who's done anything like that has done it.
Yeah.
Loads of time.
Cool. We're live, so George was caught with that one, so I'll leave that in.
Okay, so we are now live.
Yeah.
You promise we're live.
I promise we're live.
Okay, all right. Hello everyone. Sorry about that. We're running a little bit late because we started this programme and realised we weren't actually broadcasting it, which is always a clever trick to do. So anyway, welcome to the first round of Don's Trust Hustings roundtable discussions ahead of the Don's Trust Elections 2021. I am Nick Draper. I am joined to my left by the face of the BBC Sport website, Mr. Stuart Deacons. You wouldn't know that with that beard he'd be the face of anything. And to my right, George Jones, who is Welsh, but we won't hold that against him. Right, this morning then we've got 6 candidates for the election that is currently undergoing. Actually, I think ballots were actually issued last night. Just a reminder, there are 5 vacancies and we have 12 candidates in total, and we'll have the other half, not this afternoon, about 11:30 after this one. About midday, noon, when we'll have the second one. So I'm just going to introduce our candidates that we have this morning. I'll go from my left to right. We start with Freddie Flaxman, this is the second time that you put yourself forward for election.
Yes, but the first time at Plough Lane, so I'm happy to be here.
Yes, of course. I should have said we're broadcasting live from Plough Lane, but I'm sure you could have realised that from the backdrop. Graham Price, who's standing for the first time.
Yep, correct.
Dennis Lowndes, standing once again after a couple of years attempting. Chris Stewart, who was on the Don's Trust board, I think the last time was 2015, and now you're standing to come back. And then finally Mark Engelbretson.
That's correct.
I got it.
Well
so
done.
Happy I got that one. That's first time standing as well.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, cool, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to, I don't know which camera to look at, Rob. Shall I go that one?
So do it.
Okay, all right, we'll go that one. If you can see me. We're going to do some general questions to the group, and then we'll do some tailored questions based on their manifestos. All of you will get an opportunity to have your say and pitch in on all those questions, whether it's related to your manifesto or not. And then we'll take some questions from members that have sent them in prior to this broadcast, and then to any of you watching live on YouTube that would like to have your questions asked, send them in. We can't promise that we're going to ask them all, but we will try. So, where to begin? I'm actually going to start. I've introduced you from left to right, but I'm going to go from right to left this time. Start with Mark. First question, Mark. What do you understand the role of the Don's Trust board to be? Not necessarily you as an individual member, but the role of the Don's Trust board as a whole.
It's nice to get the very first question.
I
I
love
have to kick it off completely on the spot. So what is the role of the Don's Trust board? The Don's Trust board, to me, is ultimately to represent the fans and the ownership of the club, to take the club along with the PLC company to strategically think about how this organisation, this football club, is going to progress, how we're going to operate, and I think strategic is quite an important part. It may not necessarily have been what's happened in the past, but we need to work through a number of situations and challenges that the club faces and make some important decisions, bearing in mind we do have a history, and it's a very, very important history, but we need to think about taking that forward and creating even more history in the future.
Thank you very much. Chris?
It's tricky to get the second answer. Question that's been quite fully answered by Mark there. I think. So, what is the role of the Don's Trust board? You could broaden that out. And what could the role of the Don's Trust board be, and what should the role of the Don's Trust board be? And they might all be slightly different things. I think essentially, though, it is the strategic body that looks after this fantastic organisation that we've all built together. It has some particular duties. It runs these elections. It has an elected board. It appoints people to the PLC board, for example. But essentially, apart from that, its role is whatever members think its role should be. And that's the important thing, because it is there as the expression of the collective effort and collective opinions of the Don's Trust membership. So it isn't really there, I don't think, to interfere in the day-to-day, except in emergency situations where it has to. If something's gone badly wrong. It is there to advise those who are doing the day-to-day, to give them a little nudge here and there, to remind them of things that they should and shouldn't be doing, to move them back on track where they're not on track. But mostly it's there to set the direction, to say this is what we want to be, this is what we want to look like, this is how we want to work, this is what kind of organisation we want to be. And I think it does some of that really well and needs to do some of that a bit better.
Thank you. And Dennis, your thoughts?
Very interesting. Most of it's been covered as I see, but the main thing I look at it as is overseeing the running of the club and making certain that things are done and that we're also always checking that things are being done correctly, and the fact that we are going financially in the right directions, how we can improve things and help the boards to actually get more income and areas of that area. I can see also the playing area is vital, that the Don Trust basically help in any way they can to develop it and get more income so we can get more players.
Getting harder. As people come up, I agree with a lot of things that Mark and Chris said. Don't disagree with anything that Dennis said. There is a transition. We all realise that we've moved here, and we need to be careful that we don't flip-flop from one to another, because transition, as I say, it's going to take us a long time. We need to run on a hybrid model. There will be a degree of involvement. I think there's been too much onus on the Dons Trust to fill in. As a club, filled in fantastically. Every time there is a crisis, everybody steps up to the plate. But the requirement for the board to step up to the plate, frankly, I think is too often. And it's more back to reviewing the Constitution, which, if you've read the Pro Board, Chris has mentioned a bit, because the definitions are out of date, which was a spot-on point. But overall, I think the Dons Trust are the guardians of the club, and they represent the owners of the club, and it should be a case of helping create a stronger framework for oversight without having to be involved as much in the operations as we move, because we are going to have to, and we will as we grow the income, get more people in to fill roles full-time that we all know at the moment are being done by volunteers, and there's a limit to volunteers' time. They've got lives, they've got other jobs as well, most of them. So I think it's being aware of what's being achieved, what it represents overall, but also where we've got to go in the future.
Freddie?
Yeah, no, look, these are all incredibly thoughtful answers, and I think more than anything, being here, it's great to see that regardless of who's elected, the club and the trust are going to be in great hands. I mean, I think to echo sort of the fundamental principle of what's been described so far, it's the fact that the board, the Dons Trust board, represents the benefits and the aspirations of the owners, and the aspirations of the owners are the aspirations of the fans. And I think the single most important thing that the board can do to ensure that the club remains fan-owned and ensure that the fans continue to have a voice is to ensure that the club is on strong financial footing. And so I think it was described that as income of the team grows, obviously the ownership and the oversight of the board will continue to evolve. But I think it's worth mentioning that growth in income is of tantamount importance in order to ensure that the club remains fan-owned. I think it's incumbent on the board to ensure that the business is growing in a proper way so that issues of debt, issues of competitive balance and competitive strength can continue to flourish for the team.
Now, at this point, viewers, listeners, I was about to say listeners, but you're all watching, I will introduce our sixth member of this panel, who is joining us remotely, and that's Adam Proctor, who is standing for the first time. And Adam, for viewers that can see him on the screen, I'm watching it now, it's gone for the standard Zoom bookshelf shot, which I commend. Yeah, I think very commendable, Adam. Adam, do you want to put your answer forward, what you understand the role of the Dons Trust Board to be?
Sure. I mean, I think I agree with everything that everyone has said, obviously. In terms of, I think it's about direction of travel. So taking what the fans, the owners want and really running with that, and less of the operational stuff. So a lot of what people have said and what kind of organisation we want the club to be. So for me, it's moving the Dons Trust now that we're back at Plough Lane to a much more dynamic role of just setting the direction of travel based on what the owners really want. But I think everyone has really well covered this answer.
Before I move on to that, because that's already raised a couple of issues I wanted to discuss with all of you actually. Lots of talk there about finance, but in the first instance, I think Graham and Christian mostly alluded to this one. Operational strategic, this whole thing that seems to come up every single year, and the roles of board members having to get involved in the day-to-day operations to try and occasionally perhaps more frequently, dig us out of a couple of holes, but also taking on roles that, with the football club, that are perhaps roles that should be based, I think Gravy said, as part of the football club, opposed to Johnstone's board. I'm going to open this up to anyone that has any views. What do you think? Why do we think this has become the issue for us? What's been the flaw that's made what is a voluntary role, as you said, with people that have got full-time jobs and lives, that are now essentially having to fill their time with doing things operationally, be it performing volunteer roles on match days, or coming into the club during the week to sort out financial issues or issues with getting the stadium built or anything like that? Can you pinpoint where this perhaps seemed to become the norm as opposed to what should have been, as Chris says, an occasional problem or issue?
First, or do you want me to go?
I mean, I think it's worth saying that it's always been an issue ever since we restarted the club back in 2002. There's been that sort of a little bit of tension, if you like, and tension isn't always a bad thing. It can be very creative, So, what exactly is the role of the Dons Trust Board? What exactly is the role of whatever's been called the FC board, the management committee? It's had a number of, but the group of people who are, specifically charged with the day-to-day running of the club. But I think, look around you. I think this is the reason. The Plough Lane, and how far above our weight that we have punched to get ourselves back here has meant that the organisation which ran a football club at Kings Meadow, and that wasn't a simple task. I'm not for a moment saying it was. Suddenly had to, stretch to running this fantastic facility, and without necessarily having the people in place, and to some extent the money in place to get those people in place. So I think we shouldn't really be surprised that that's become quite a significant issue over the last year and a half, and obviously the last year and a half or so has there have been some other issues around as well that we all know about. So no big surprise there, but I think really the job of the Dons Trust Board here is to make sure that the club is fit and ready to do all the things it needs to do to sell tickets properly and well, in a way that makes people happy and brings them in, to run all the things that are in the ground and all those things. Those are the job of the Dons Trust Board. Now, you've got a group of very committed, caring people there on the Dons Trust Board who want to make that happen. So it's very easy to go, right, I can see a problem, I'm going to do what I can to try and fix it today, because that is, that's everybody's first thought, isn't it? There's an issue, I'm going to go and sort it out. And that's not wrong. It comes from a great place, and sometimes it's really, really important. It's getting the balance right between actually the Dons Trust Board saying, there's a problem there. What we're going to do is make sure the club's in the right place, in the right position.
There's been a problem. There's a problem. Chris is absolutely right. There's been a problem, however, identifying one-off fixes to things that actually, in business speak, you need to map, build a process, systematise it, and embed it into your operations. The time taken to do that takes a lot of time. The other point is, Chris is also right, there's always been that issue as we've gone through the leagues, but as you go through the leagues, the step on the ladder between each league gets bigger and bigger. And that's the same off the pitch as it is on it. And to be honest, it's been harder to keep up off the pitch than it has on it. And all credit to all people who've been on the Dons Trust Board before, who've stepped up and given so much of their time for free. It's quite incredible, really.
I was going to say,
just to add to that, our volunteer model has been so successful as we have gone up through the leagues. I saw it as a fan. I also saw it as a match official with the Football Association coming through and getting the opportunity to officiate AFC Wimbledon. But I think when we took that step up into the Football League, as you say, it's a massive step. And behind the scenes, the way that a trust board operates, the way that a football club operates, you have to suddenly really step up on your professionalism. And you can't necessarily always rely on the volunteer model. It will work to an extent, but there's a number of things you then need to very quickly professionalise, and I think that's where we have been slow, and we now need to think, if we want to become a championship club, which I'm sure every single fan of AFC Wimbledon wants us to become, and everyone that works for the club and is involved with the club wants us to become, and maybe beyond, we've got to start stepping up on that professionalism. We've got to get the right people to do the right roles for us with the right level of expertise, and I think we've been missing that, and that's then resulted in people wanting to roll their sleeves up and help, but that doesn't necessarily actually help us longer term.
But to that point, and again, coming into it a bit more recently, it seems fundamentally then it becomes in part a financial problem, because the way to staff the club with greater professionalism and frankly more people who can do more work to help in more ways requires having a larger budget amongst the team, for the team, so that they can spend more. And then in order to avoid debt becoming an issue, it also requires then growing revenue. And so that is just, to me, it seems growing pains along the way, and it's exciting to even be at this point. I think the next phase of the journey is, how does the club solidify its financial position, grow top line revenue, so that after that, more can be reinvested in the day-to-day operations of the club, and sort of promote the sort of professionalism that you're describing. It's all in part a function too of just outpace. It's incredible what's been built, given where the club is coming from.
That's a really good point, because shouldn't the Dons Trust Board and AFC Wimbledon Limited be focusing on the strategics, getting it right, getting the finances, thinking about how we can get the finances to be able to put us on the sound footing going forward, rather than having to be distracted quite frequently with rolling our sleeves up with wondering how we're going to get some season tickets out, or how we're going to get part of the ground painted.
That is a fundamental function of the club, though, to ensure that fans can actually get in to watch the game. So, touching back on a point that Chris made, the Dons Trust, the areas that get involved in, clearly the match day experience has the biggest impact on the members of the Dons Trust and of the wider fan base. So that is a point to be involved and roll sleeves up. There may be other areas where, yes.
I think one of the areas as well where we can actually improve things is that we've got a lot of people who are fans who we could co-opt onto these areas where we have issues. And the fact is, by co-opting people into those areas, we can have little subcommittees. And okay, committees I hate, but at the end of the day, if you've got the expertise brought in to do those areas, then that way you can have your volunteers, you can have your co-opted people, and between them, we're all pulling in the same direction and getting this club working as one. Because this stadium alone is a 24/7 stadium. It needs to be working at its full capacity, and at the moment we just don't have the people to actually take it forward.
And the reality is, I think the answer is probably both, right? The club needs to exist and operate on a day-to-day basis. There also needs to be the ability to step back and look about where the next phase of growth comes from. And while today this in-stadium experience is the number one way in which fans probably engage with the team, the number of possible fans who are out there and the number of new revenue streams that are out there that extend beyond the stadium is probably even larger and likely to be the next phase of growth. So how do you ensure that this beautiful stadium continues to operate, but then you can also have an eye towards what's coming next?
Can I clarify a point then, Dennis, just to come back
Yeah.
to you? Talk about co-opting people into positions. Can you just explain, sorry, because I want to get this right in mind.
Yeah.
Co-option for me, we're talking about, because I think there's room for manoeuvre on co-opting people onto the Dons Trust Board to help out with certain things, but are you talking more about co-opting people onto the
PLC.
operational things,
Yeah, the operation.
day-to-day things?
Yes.
Is that still an issue of stretching volunteer fan base?
No, because I think if you actually get the right co-op, there are a lot of co-opted people are available out there who have got the expertise. We've never tapped really into our fan base and what people can offer to this club. And I think we've got to go out to those people and say, look, we've got these areas where we need to actually help and develop. We need a little group of people to come in, like we did when we first started with the stadium committees and all these people. They all had certain projects. At the moment, we're asking people to do, say, 10 projects all at the same time, and in the end, it doesn't specialise, and you haven't got the specialisation that you need to actually take it forward.
I'll just very quickly, Nick.
Introduce Adam again.
Dennis mentioned committees and culture and all of those things. Some of those are technical words that might mean something, but I understand. Get people together to do what they need to do. And I think the finance committee, which has been put together, which I know Graham works on, and another candidate, Michelle, is part of as well. But I think that's an example, and it might be that finance is so special that it can only work in that way. But it seems unlikely to me. I think that's an example.
I would disagree with that.
As an accountant, I would disagree with it as well. Absolutely, nothing special about numbers. But I think that's a model. Where we've got, there's some of the Dons Trust board, there's some of the PLC, and there's people from outside as well who don't have any, particular, elected or appointed role, who are working together. And if you've seen the output, and I really hope you have seen the output of the most recent update and the update in June, that's excellent work. Keeping members up to date with the financial position, which is something that maybe we haven't done fantastically in the past. Haven't always done fantastically in the past, particularly November 2019 comes to mind. That work is excellent, and I think that's a model for other areas.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to introduce Adam back in. Adam, I think we've got a little bit of a problem communicating with you. So,
Okay.
If you want to stick your oar. Raise your hand.
I'm not sure if you guys can still hear me in the room, so that's why I don't think I could
Jump in.
No problem.
And there's obviously a bit of a feedback loop now. But hopefully the YouTube is working and that people can hear me there. I mean, I just want to echo one of the reasons for standing now is because of the fact that we've moved to Plough Lane and we have the ability to generate a ton more revenue than we ever have before. And so that means that we can start to professionalise positions within the club to do the things that we really want to do and to kick on, obviously, to the next sort of level. So for me, we need to expand the volunteer basis. That's been fantastic. We need to think about some of the things that have been discussed in terms of getting more young people involved in groups to look at different types of activities that could happen around the stadium. But for me, this is the moment that we need to solidify the professional nature of the back room of the club. And it's through the revenue that the stadium can generate that we can do that. And that's how we can move on to, Championship or wherever we want to go. So for me, I guess I'm echoing what a lot of other people said, but I think one of the reasons that I've stood, and I'm sure others have, is that this is a moment where we can really do something because of Plough Lane.
There you go. Thanks, Adam. I was just say, Adam, just if you just whack your hand up so George knows, and then George will let me know when you want to pitch in, and that will solve that problem. Professionalise, that's a word that's come up a couple of times, professionalise operations and things like that. And Adam and Mark, you both mentioned perhaps aiming to be a championship level club. Are the problems we've experienced, as we've mentioned, I think Chris mentioned, we've grown on the pitch so quickly and so well that we haven't been able to keep up off the pitch with that. To try and to get those two things to marry up, Mark, if I start with you, we have to be realistic, don't we, and be honest with ourselves and the membership and say, this isn't going to be an overnight thing. How quickly do you think we can get those two things to marry up?
It can sometimes be a case of how long is a piece of string as to how long it's going to take. Certainly some urgent work needs to be done in collaboration with the PLC board to work through that. And I think as Freddie has alluded to, how can we increase our revenue streams, not just around Plough Lane, but also externally? And I have to say, I like some of the things that came out of Freddie's manifesto around generating money externally for the club, bringing in revenue, selling the AFC Wimbledon story more, selling it more as a club, not just locally, but further across the UK, internationally as well. It will take time. Yes, it's not going to be tomorrow, and I think, as I put in my manifesto, Rome was never built in a day, and neither is a football club. How soon would I love to be able to see AFC Wimbledon challenging to get into the Championship? I think now that we have this wonderful stadium, a lot of opportunities in front of us, I'd love to see us be challenging within the next 3 to 5 years, but we need to really start working hard and thinking about how we're going to do that strategically now and over the coming months. Otherwise, it could be years before we can equalise sometimes the great players we have on the pitch. I know fans have been a little bit disappointed in the last few weeks, but we do have a great crop of young players who I think could take us a lot further.
Are we too closely linking success for the first team, men's first team, on the pitch with what we want to be as a football club? And I know we're talking about finances and the need to generate revenue, and perhaps you do need to be a League One Championship club.
Short
to do
answer,
that.
yes.
Okay, is that so? But my question is priority then on the pitch, or at the moment is it off
Well,
the pitch?
there's a bit around. We have an opportunity to build because the focus. You can look at the what's the output from the Premiership and the Championship. The focus is so much on the pitch in the top 2 divisions, and understandably so, because of the finance, because the TV money is so big, and in fact the money that's generated by the fans on a match day is almost insignificant, whereas at the moment it is significant. So coming back to some of the points, some of it's about communication and driving everything forward. So I would be in favour of a more formalised committee, call it work group structures, but having regular communication with the fans, but that will flush out people who have skill sets that we can use. We have to build the whole piece out, not just the first team. So therefore, sorting out a training ground, sorting out the academy, I would suggest now is probably more important than generating a load of money to sign a centre forward who's going to score 30 goals. Because that would great, that might get you promotion. But then when I was talking about the rungs on the ladder, we'd have even greater problems. So now's an opportunity to focus on how we build the whole piece out. The ladies' team, everything.
Yeah, I can honestly say the strength of our club actually lies away from the actual first team. The strength of our club relies with the community, and the fact is that we've got a community-based football club which has a fantastic academy, has a great girls section, it has a ladies section, it has the DLAG, and this area they're the areas we should be tapping into, because all these people, we've got the first team, yes, we all want the first team to do well, but we've got to get the main thing with the first team, you need a large amount of money to actually improve your football club. But the fact is the others can actually bring it all around together by bringing it as one, because you can get outside sources giving more money into this club. And I keep on harking on, this club has got the best facility it's ever had, and 24/7 this stadium must work, and the income from this stadium can then give you more money to put onto your players onto the pitch. And the thing about it, perhaps, and I don't know whether we do it, we should say if we've got a gross income of whatever, we should actually set aside specifically an amount of money for that first team. That's their budget, and it comes from the whole club working together and getting it there.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that sort of one club approach in a bit as well. Adam.
Yeah, it was just to sort of talk about, I think those two things are intrinsically linked in terms of the income and where it goes to the first team. But I think one of the things that we haven't done and we now have an opportunity to do is to properly sell our brand. I mean, Freddie talks about it as well. We can generate lots of interest in the club because of the type of club that we are. And so I think we don't want to rely on income that, you know, maybe falls down the pyramid in the future. There are other things we can do because of the unique position our club is in, and the fact that we are community based and community owned. I think that's something that we now need to strengthen on and move forward and bring in, you know, people watching from around the world. People are interested in our story because we're a unique club that's bucking the trend that, you know, most of our football clubs don't have the model that we have, and there's a reason for that. Because they rely on income in a different way, and we need to think differently about where all of our money comes from. And I think that's our brand, and getting much better at selling our story.
Are we certain of that? Oh wait, sorry for a second. Are we certain? Freddie, I'll start with you. Are we certain with what our brand is? Do we know? Do you think the fans that come on a match day and everything like are aware of what our brand is and what our priorities are, especially as we're having that conversation, be it generating money to support the whole club in every single area or prioritising maintaining League One position? Are these things that we've got in our own heads clear, let alone communicate that to the match-going fan?
It's a great question. I guess the first thing I would say, taking a step back, is, I know it's not the focal point of the question, but it's worth not missing the fact that there are urgent issues that if don't get solved, you don't have the privilege of being able to spend the time to sort through the brand, sort through global storytelling, and that's primarily the debt payment that's coming due next year, and I know we'll get to that. But it goes without saying, it speaks to the first question we had, which is there's this constant balance between the here and now and doing the tactical things that must be worked on, and then trying to free up time to look forward. So setting that aside for a second, do I think there's a clear vision of what the brand is? I think for the people who know the club, I think there is, which is this community story, which inspired me, and I know everybody here in this room has played an active role in making it a reality, which is this underdog story of something rising from nothing. And look at what is around us now. It speaks to the power of community. And I think that is a story that any fan of sport can get behind. And if you can inspire a fan of sport, the revenue follows, whether it be through media, whether it be through the international membership, and any new types of revenue streams that are likely to emerge for clubs and club owners. I think where there's a gap is how many people know that story. And I think what I'd love to be able to bring to the Don's Trust board is the perspective of somebody who has come to the club from outside of being able to attend the matches here in person, and yet is still inspired by the story and has a view into how the inspirational story can be monetized through media and other channels online.
Mark, your thoughts on our branding? Or do the match going fan understand our priorities to you?
It's interesting at the moment because we're seeing moving to Plough Lane. We're getting a lot of new fans coming in. Are they coming here because it's a local football club to them, or are they coming here because they understand the history of the club and what we stand for? I think probably a lot of them is because it's a new local football club and they don't understand it. Yes, we are trying to do small pockets of work, but we do need to do a lot more to attract people here, to get them to understand the ethos of the club. But I also think it's very important now, and the opportunity that we have by coming to Plough Lane is, yes, we have an amazing history and a very, very unique history. But you know what? We can make an awful lot of new history going forward with this club in very, very different ways, with new fans coming through the door, young children coming, getting their mums and dads to come as well. So I think there's an awful lot for us to learn, an awful lot for us to do around the club's identity.
Chris?
What's the question? Sorry, we've talked about quite a number of things.
We have dotted around a few things.
I just want to be sure that I answer.
Do we have a clear understanding of what we understand our brand to be?
I don't think we do. I mean, I think lots of people have done lots of really good work on that. From a sort of, if you like, capital B branding, marketing point of view, and I think the new badge and those kind. It's not that new now, is it? But those kinds of things have been worked on very well by people who are very good at what they do. So I think that when Mark, for example, talks about the ethos of the club, and Freddie talks about the feeling that he's got, not necessarily being much, being able to be a match-going fan, but actually being inspired by that. And I've got friends around the world who say similar things, and it's interesting how the perspective is different from someone who comes to games, seeing that story and being inspired by it and being wanting to buy PLC shares or invest in the Plough Lane bond that people have done from all over the world as well. I think that's a really important perspective, but I think we need to. It's one of those questions. It covers a huge range of things, because people talk about Don's Trust membership, and is the Don's Trust board reflective of the Don's Trust membership? That's one thing. Is the Don's Trust membership reflective of the fan base You know, to what extent is it, and to what extent is it not? And is that reflective of the the communities that we find ourselves in? And I think they're all really important questions. Because the long-term health and well-being of this football club lies in the answer to all of those questions being closer to yes than I think it is now. You know, that we need to be fully embedded in our local communities and playing, and there's great work going on, and there's great work that has been done, fully embedded in our communities. We need to find a way to get people in the fan base inspired by the ethos of the club, as well as the football on the pitch. Coming back to your question about, do we get that emphasis right between the back office and what goes on the pitch and organising the thing? That doesn't mean you want, you think you've got some idea that 10, 11, 15, 18-year-olds are going to be, packing into the rooms here, for meetings that go on from 7:30 till 10:30 at night, and are often held up from some fairly arcane constitutional questions or what. But how do we get that energy directed into the club, reflecting the what we call the ethos of the club, and making sure that the Dons Trust membership board and therefore the football club reflects all of that? I think that's a massive question, and there's loads of work, and there always will be loads of work to do. It's not a criticism of what's gone on in the past. It's one of those things, but like that tension between operational and strategic. It's one of those things that will always be there and will always require work. We will always have new fans coming. We will always have new people moving into this area. We will always have new people being born in this area. And we will always have new issues that our the fantastic work of the foundation and Don's Local Action Group needs to take account of and needs to be part of. So that's an ongoing thing that will always be part of the Dons Trust.
I want to ask you, because you've used that word reflective and making sure the Dons Trust board reflects the membership. This is an interesting question for me because there's two strands to this one. Just very briefly, Chris, in your thinking, when you say reflective, what do you mean by that? In what regard do you mean reflective?
I guess it comes down to a couple of things really. First of all, I mean, you look around the table, and I'm not sure that we are a fantastic cross section of the people who come to our games. That's not my impression from coming to games. Mm-hmm. We're certainly a bit older than lots of people who come to games. That's not to say that's not to say that.
Speak for yourself. Yeah,
I appreciate, Nick, that you're only 27 and always will be only 27. I understand that. But we're all men. There's lots and lots of women who come to our games, and fewer, I think, who join the Dons Trust and so on. There've been some fantastic, really inspiring women who've been members of the Dons Trust board and currently are. So I think reflective in that sense. Does it look and feel like around here? Does it look and feel like out there in the stand, in the stands and on the terrace? Does it feel like we're the same? That we're able to represent because we come from, because we look like, because we sound like, because we talk like, because we live like the people who come to games and the people who live in our part of the world and the communities that we find ourselves in. I think that's one thing, and the other part of it is, do we have the same ideas? And that's very much a two-way thing, isn't it? Because there's an organisation here that was set up back in 2000 and two, the football club and the Dons Trust before that. Set out for a particular purpose, and it wants to continue that purpose, and people who've been invested in that and are still invested in that want to continue that purpose. But we've got an awful lot of persuasion to do, because there's an awful lot of people who really enjoy, if you like, the product, as Mark says, sometimes enjoy the product a bit less, the football on the pitch, really enjoy that, love that part of it, love what we're doing here, but actually, maybe aren't quite so committed to the other things that we talk about when we're talking about the ethos of the club. And that's a disconnect that over time, will grow, because, those things do, unless we're all working on it actively all the time.
The thing about it also is the fact that all these fans, whether they are Dons Trust members or not, they all want the club to succeed. Everybody out in those terraces want to see the first team progress. They want to see the club progress. And the fact is, I'm sure they all pull in the same. As long as we all pull in the same direction and don't go off in factions, then this club will survive. I mean, I can only say from my experiences, with 3 generations of a family being part of this club. I mean, I've got grandchildren now who got inspired by Akin Fenwar, and since then have never watched the game every week, season ticket holders, and they're there for the future. It's their children, and I'm going back now, but when we had the battles of getting our own football club, the fact is that the certain man that killed us, or thought he had killed us, he basically said, "You're part of my family." We were never part of his family because he had a direction which none of us wanted to ever go into, and we've got to make certain we protect that. I don't want to see any of my family going away. I want this club to be here when I'm gone. And I keep saying in my manifesto, I said, we're custodians of this club. At the end of the day, when you're dead and buried, the club should still be here and there's a future. And that's all I can say.
Some of it comes back to Freddie's comments about brand. So Seth Godin wrote a book, What's My Tribe? And funnily enough, probably the world's biggest tribe is the underdog. So the story is a huge story. And also, we're talking very insular here in some respects, because community is not just what you can see and touch and feel by you. Community from a brand point of view and identification is global. So therefore it gets harder to reflect everyone's views. So I think it's important that we are a broad church and that there's room for more than just one view, although there is a general acceptance and agreement on fundamental principles that guide the club. And as long as we've got that, I'm quite comfortable. The other bit I would say is having a formalised committee structure and reporting will flush out people who have skill sets that, yeah, they might turn up on a Saturday, you know, with a couple of friends, and we have no idea of what they do for a day job.
Yeah.
And anything that brings more people out, hopefully, will be more reflective of the fan base, where they come from, what their ideas are as well. Because diversity of thought is just as important as whether you're male or female.
Yeah, I mean, that was the point I'll put to all of you very quickly, as Chris raised there. When I asked about the reflectiveness of the board to the membership, in my head, yeah, there's 2 strands to this one. But on the first point, looking around the table, as Chris said, and you'll probably see similar in the second session as well, is it important? If, for example, 5 of you sat here, or 5 of the 6 of you, Adam, were to get onto the board this time around, can you still not represent the views of other people? Do you, without you yourself perhaps having different diverse backgrounds?
I think yes, we can represent. What we need to do is listen to what the fans are saying, and we need to reach out to all different types of fans to listen, different forums. Appreciate what you're saying, Chris. You don't want, you don't want 11, 16-year-olds may not want to come to a meeting. They find it dull and boring. Well, let's explore other ways that we can engage with them. Market researches. I do think, and I do this through some of my day job, I'm involved within the pensions industry on regulatory diversity and inclusion working groups, and thinking about how can we encourage more people to come forward as pension scheme trustee directors from wide diverse groups. Well, how can we do that with this club? We've got all of these people out there. We've got people from BAME, we've got males, we've got females, we've got young people, we've got old people. How can we get more of them getting involved with the Dons Trust and becoming members? Because I think we've got quite a few fans that come to the ground that aren't members of the Dons Trust. And then how can we encourage them to be involved on the Dons Trust board or working groups? And it's interesting about the skill sets of people and understanding how can we best tap into that. I recall, and I'm just trying to remember in my head as people have been talking, I think it was earlier this year, may even been last year, the Dons Trust and I think it was the club carried out a survey asking fans what they did for day jobs, what their skill sets were, would they be happy to be involved in working groups and projects going forward in the future. I certainly responded to that positively. Have I heard anything more about that? No, I haven't. So we've got that information. Let's start using it and doing something with it.
Yeah, just to follow on in terms of like, can we represent diversity? Well, we can. I know we can, because the way you do that, Bell Hooks talks about surrounding yourself with people that are different to you. So one of the things we have to do at this point is get our board members out there talking to people who aren't like them. And then the other piece that we need to do, again, it comes back to projecting what we are, is we need to think really carefully about all of the images we use, all of the things that show what we are, and making sure that that is different people from different backgrounds. I've done it with a games course here. You know, we have 60% female students on the course, which is unheard of a UK games course. And that's been done through a number of years of projecting people who look different to me, so that other people can say, I could be in that place. And so hopefully the board itself will eventually become more diverse in terms of the individuals that are on it. But the first starting place to represent that diversity is to go and talk and meet people who aren't like me or a lot of the people around this table.
I think Adam's exactly right. I think one other responsibility of the board is to lead that culture change. You know, my sense is, you know, I am newer to the trust and newer to the fan base, and I am American. I don't live in Wimbledon, haven't been to a match. And I think, understandably, given the history of the club, me as a newer fan, I'm viewed somewhat skeptically. And I think there's an inclination to view newer fans, not skeptically, but with a protective view into what's been built today. And I think there's a needle to thread here, which is not easy, and I'm not suggesting that, which is ensuring the club is protected, remains fan-owned, and as Dennis inspirationally described, is here forever. But how do you combine that protectiveness with an openness and a willingness to bring in new people, many of which will join the trust and will infuse the trust with a perspective that's maybe different and more diverse than it's been in the past. And I think that's part of just the normal growing pains when you've had great success to get to this point today.
One more question I'm going to put to all of you before we then, because I'm conscious of time, I want to get to sort of viewer questions and members' questions to you. The first one, we had a couple of comments just to say if we can avoid tapping the table, apparently, because that's causing some sound issues. Sorry, and I've been guilty of that as well. So we'll do that for you at home. My question is, and I'll start, this time I'll go around this way and we'll finish up with Adam, start with Freddie. Because you mentioned there, Freddie, reflection of, the other part of it is reflecting the views of the membership. And part of this is, as you said, you talked about being a fan-owned club and remaining that way. And is that an example of where, if we're going to set that to Don's Trust, that's coming top down, and our members and our fans are being told this is what we're going to be? Or do we need to, how regularly, or do we need to have that discussion with our membership if that's not what they want? If they want to look elsewhere, are we being truly reflective if we're not taking on those points of view? Or if that was to be, which I don't think it is by any stretch of the imagination at the moment, if that was to be the majority opinion that fan ownership is not the way we want to go forward. First of all, I think Freddie, you've already sort of said there, you think that's important, we should remain fan owned. Mm-hmm. Are there circumstances which you would consider ceding that?
So I think, and I've obviously seen all the debate on the topic, and I know it inspires some strong points of view.
Forthright opinions.
Yeah, but understandably, right? Like, I want to start by saying the story is built on the back of the fact that it's fan-owned, and, you know, without it being fan-owned, we would not be here today. So I can understand why, and frankly, I'd be somewhat disappointed if it didn't inspire a healthy debate. I think for the folks who are very, very religiously enshrinement, I think the concern they have is once you can't unring the bell. Once you give up control and once you give up majority ownership, it's not easy to take that back as fans, even if you build in contractually means of regaining equity ownership. And so, you know, do I think the club should never even have it as an option on the table? No. But do I think that the fan majority ownership of the club should be a sort of religious tenet? I think yes. Now, is that something that comes top down or bottoms up? This is where being board members, and I've been on a number of boards, it's as much an art as it is a science, right? Because the world changes, opinions change, and fan views evolve, and the trust view evolves. And so, again, this is a natural evolution of the club from being what it has been to how do you keep what has made the club great and the story of the club great and continue to evolve it going forward. And I think that's first an understanding of what it is that makes this club unique, and I think it's fan ownership. Mm-hmm. But I think second, it's you have to maintain an open-minded, thoughtful dialogue with fans, which means as a board member, not saying definitively it must be so this way or definitively it must be so that way. We are, I like as Dennis put it, custodians and stewards, and I think it's important to reflect the moods and beliefs of the fans. But I'll tell you, you cannot unring the bell. You only have one chance to do that, and the second you do that, it is done forever. Yeah. And so, to me, this is sort of an extreme example, and I'm not convinced, based on what I've seen, that it needs to be an option yet. I don't think we're close to that point. And so I think the debate around it and the folks who are driving the debate are losing sight of the fact that there are 10 business ideas out there that today can help promote the finances of the clubs without having to pull the break glass in case of emergency option.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Following on to a large extent from that, the finance report that came out recently was Plan A and Plan B. Slightly simplified because there's bits in between, as you can imagine. There's a bit of a gradient there. From the point of view of fan ownership, I'm one of those that's, yes, you're right, that is the brand, but also that's what it's about. That's why I'm involved to the level I am. If this just becomes another football club, I'll turn up and have a drink with my friends, but I won't be involved to the level I am now, that's for sure. And I think a lot of people feel like that. I would say Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. Plan C is breaking the glass, and that has got to be absolutely the last thing. Plan A is where we are now, is our current structure, which is down to 75% and don't go below, and hopefully drive the revenues so that we don't need to change. Plan B might be embodied in the report that Tracy Crouch is about to come out with, because
this is a fair game.
That's fair game, yeah, which I've been a sponsor of. But that is more about, can we enshrine in law, same as in Germany, as the Bundesliga, the 51%. Frankly, I think there's too many vested interests. I'd love that to happen. I really would like that to happen, but I don't think it will. There are a lot of vested interests from a commercial point of view higher up the leagues who would not like that at all. So maybe there needs to be a middle ground. So there was a document written about Purpose Foundation by Dave Boyle, Charlie Talbot, myself, and that actually is my version of Plan B, break the glass, because that squares the circle, because it allows more equity to be sold, yet the fan ownership remains in place. I don't want to go through it all now because it'll take too long. So, absolute sale, I think there's ways to avoid that.
Thank you. Dennis?
My opinion, basically, I'm just interested in the fans' own club. If this club goes any other direction, then as far as I'm concerned, we're finished. And I think, that's what we started our club for. We've had the troubles and tribulations in the past, and I don't want to see it ever again.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I would agree with Freddie on two things. He said, first of all, you can't unring the bell. So the problem with what was put in front of us 2 years ago was it was a proposal that said we effectively give up control of the future now. And that's why it was unacceptable. Now, lots of people who were against that have all sorts of different views about, is it possible that there could be a legal framework in England, for a German-style 50% plus one, the Purpose Foundation, 75%. There are people, who are opposed to that, who would rather get back to 100% ownership. There's a range within that, but the problem with it was it gave up control. That was the basis on which, and that's why it had to be stopped, and it was stopped.
Carpetbaggers, removal of preemptive rights.
The removal of, absolutely, and that's exactly what the problem was, and it was stopped, and it was stopped by us collectively, and actually, that's the thing about fan ownership. It's not some mystical, holy grail, that means that everything is perfect or always wonderful. But it makes it our problem always. We can't give that away to the next Sam Hammam, the next Schellinger Rocker, the next the next Charles Koppel, or even the next I don't know who, Saudi Arabian sovereign fund. It's our problem because it's our club, and we have to work together to fix it. So, is it possible that it fails? Of course, it's possible it fails. Any endeavour that is worth doing carries the possibility of failure. And if we do fail, which I don't see any reason why we think we should, and that's the other part I want to agree with, I can't see anything at the moment that says we've failed. There are 40,000 football clubs in England, and we're in the top 60 odd. That's not failure. That is not failure. So there's nothing there that says to me we failed. But if we do fail, there'll need to be a plan C or a plan D or a plan F. Of course there will. But we're not planning for that now. I don't think there's any way, I'm not aware of any way in English law that you can actually, stop something happening. There's all sorts of things that people think can be done. But, look at the flats down the road that built on land that was covenanted for the the sole purpose of a football club. I'm not convinced there's a legal way of ensuring that something can't be done in the future. I said in my manifesto, I'll never vote to sell out the club. I won't. I'm not going to stop, I'm not going to try and stop you from doing it. If the majority of our fans, if the majority of our members want to shut up shop and go and, run supporters club coaches, as was suggested, at that meeting 2 years ago, that was the best thing the Dons Trust could do, then, that's what will happen, because that's how we make our decisions. We make our decisions together. We talk about them, we discuss them in a healthy, open way. Then we make a decision, and then we implement it. That's what we're about. And so it would be great if something comes from Tracy Crouch proposals. It would be absolutely fantastic. I think something might, but I think
I don't think we'll get the 51. Unfortunately,
I suspect it won't be everything that we want, and there we go. But I do think that something might come of that. In the end, 75% has done us well. It's meant that we've been able to do the things we wanted to do. We needed to have some very difficult votes to get here, and we did that without much difficulty, with a lot of effort, without much difficulty. When there's something that we need to do, that we all agree there's something we need to do, we can do it. There's no need to change that at the moment.
Thank you, and thank you for saying that, should we fail, thank you for not saying we go again. I appreciate that. Mark?
Picking up on one of Freddie's opening points, I think it's really important on this subject that we continually listen and engage with the fans of this football club. What do they want? What is the current sentiment? That may change over time, that may well stay the same. We know what the mood of the fans are at the moment. There are some that are a lot more vocal than others. But generally, I think there is a consensus amongst the club and the fans. One of the things I don't think we should do, and I sometimes see it happening, is it becomes too much of a distraction about the ownership of this club, and it sidetracks people from some of the challenges and things that we have in front of us. And people end up getting so hung up about it. We need to, as a football club, whether that's the Dons Trust Board, whether it's AFC Wimbledon PLC, whether it's the fans, we need to continually look for new solutions that are innovative. And we've done that today. We did Cedars, we've done the Bond. They've been really, really great. Other people have looked into this football club and gone, that's amazing, absolutely amazing what you have done, what you have achieved. We can carry on doing that and carry on coming up with new ideas. That's not to say that somebody on the Don's Trust board is going to be the one that comes up with that idea, but let's work through them. We've got some challenges ahead of us in April with regards to the refinancing of the debt. I'm sure we will come through that and we will move forward. But we need to look at ways to bring more equity into the club. But right here, right now, do you move away from fan ownership? No, you don't. It's too much importance to the fans and everyone involved with this football club.
Thank you. Finally, Adam.
Yes, it's hard to go last, isn't it?
Sorry,
you couldn't.
there's a bit of feedback again. I'll wait for the feedback. Okay, cool. So, first thing I want to say is that this isn't a top-down thing about fan ownership. Not at all. The survey that went out to the members suggested that 96+% want the club to be fan-owned. Everyone I talk to wants the club to be fan-owned. Even the young kids that I talk to want the club to be fan-owned because it situates the club in the community. You know, football, everyone around the table will agree football is quite broken in terms of finances. So why would we look to a model that is broken? And what do we think that model would bring? You know, what would it actually achieve if someone came in and bought control of the club and that control's gone? It doesn't mean that we're going to become first in the Premier League whatsoever. So I think, again, you know, for me, and I've said it in my manifesto, obviously we listen to the members. That's really important. But I think it's also important that we understand that the members know what losing control would actually mean. And I think we'd lose a lot. You know, people around this table probably wouldn't be doing these things. The volunteers, they wouldn't be doing their things. You know, we are the envy of fans up and down the pyramid. I know that. You know, and also you can feel it when you come into the stadium. I had friends of mine who are armchair Chelsea fans, you know, wanting to buy our shirts just from coming to Plough Lane once because they can feel it. The club means something to the community, and that's a big thing. And I think, again, we need to just really double down on that and show that we're a shining beacon in what is quite a dark place for football at this time. Hopefully the review, fair game will start to transform that. But you speak to fans around the world about our model and about the fact that we own the club, they are envious of us. And so that for me is a big thing. I don't think we need a break glass solution. We need to be sensible, sustainable, business orientated. We don't need some sugar daddy, sugar mummy to come in and save us. We've saved ourselves numerous times and we continue to do that. And I think double down on that ethos, go and talk to the fans out there. They get what this is about, and it's really important that we, you know, keep that as our core.
Very good.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, gents, for all your answers there. This is the point where I hand over to my glamorous assistant who didn't turn up, so we got George instead. And George, you're going to present you're not going to present members. Don't do that, whatever you do. Present questions from our members to the panel, and I'm just going to sit back and relax now, so it's all yours. So if it goes wrong, it's all your fault.
Thank you for that. We'll go around the table, starting obviously with you, Mark. First question we've got is from Peter Godfrey, who wants to know, do you think that the candidates, he wants to know, do you guys think that the membership of the Don Trust should be automatically included when you purchase a season ticket, or other, you know, stadium card or anything like that? So, Mark.
Actually, I don't think that's a bad idea. Funnily enough, my elderly mum, I got her a season ticket for the first time this year because she's been coming quite frequently since my father passed away, and she said to me this morning, can I vote for the Don's Trust Board elections? And I said, no, Mum, you're not a member. Well, why aren't I a member? I said, because you've not paid the subscription. Well, how can I? And actually, some people aren't necessarily aware how to do it, etc., etc. Doing it through a bolt-on with a season ticket, probably really, really good idea.
Chris?
I'm not sure. So it's been a suggestion that's been knocked around for
20 years.
a long time since we started, certainly. And I think there's pluses and minuses. I think but I think one of the things that we should make sure that we do is make sure everybody's aware of how they can, be part of this fantastic journey and join that collective decision making. I think that's really right. I think that if we were to include it with season tickets, I'm not sure that it would make a huge difference in terms of numbers or whatever. I'm not exactly sure, and I'd be interested to know what those numbers are. But I think that it's worthwhile, the Dons Trust Board, putting a lot of time and effort into making sure that people are aware of the benefits of the Dons Trust existence and the benefits of your being a member of it. And if we can't persuade people of that, then I'm not sure that the Dons Trust deserves to have them as a member. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'm open to it. I'm not fundamentally against the idea. I don't think it's a bad one. But I'm not convinced it's the right way to approach the issue, which I think we've touched on a few times, which is how do we make sure that the trust represents the members and represents the fan base properly.
Dennis?
I think we should actually have a facility within the season ticket when we send out the applications for the season tickets that you have a tick box and you say, yes, I'd like to be a Dons Trust member. Perhaps that then overcomes the problem of people not knowing how to become a Dons Trust member. And at the same time, why not do a bit of a spiel about the Dons Trust, about what its function is, what it wants to do, and have it all part of the season ticket sellout.
Right.
Pretty much in favour of including it in a similar way to Dennis. One thing I would say is that if you look at two websites, the separation psychologically when you're logging on between the Dons Trust and the club is far too big, and it should be in one website. Hold on, one indivisible club, anybody? Let's start with the trust before we start talking about the academy and the ladies and the girls.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a better way to I think you'd get greater take-up straight away.
Freddie?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add other than my own experience, which is, which sort of left me with two conclusions that everybody here has mentioned so far. One is I think anyone who proactively wants to be a member should be as easy as possible, and whether that's a checkbox or any other means of making membership application really simple. And the second is the structures of the trust versus the club versus the stadium versus can be simplified. And I think the reason you do that is not just to do it necessarily for fun's sake, but to create the sense of one club and to simplify the ability that for people who want to proactively be involved, they can really easily.
Yeah. And Adam?
Yeah, just
Follow on, I think make it as easy as possible for anyone to become a member. That's clear. We want to make it as easy as possible. But we know, but that's got to be followed behind with two things, which is like, what are the benefits of being a member and how do we encourage people to become a member? And those two things are intrinsically linked, and then just make it as easy as possible for people to make that choice. But I don't think we spell out well enough yet what the benefits are of being a member, and encouraging people enough to be a member, and then make it as easy. So yeah, what everyone else has really said, I suspect.
Can I just add one comment?
Yes,
to that? Linking back in, being a member is part of the brand.
Yep.
We said fan ownership.
Yeah.
That's what it means. You own the club.
Yep.
I mean, I was just going to make the point actually as I was walking into the stadium today and I was coming into by the main entrance. You've got the huge great AFC Wimbledon badge on the side of the stadium. Thinking, did we miss a trick by not putting the Dons Trust badge next to it? I don't know, but it's just a thought. That's my own thought. It's not about me. It's about the candidates.
Or a big sign saying fans own club.
Or something like that. Yeah, sorry, George.
Mags Hutchinson, obviously Pro Boards is one of the benefits of being a member. She wants to know how we can best utilise it. This time I'll start with Adam.
Can we clarify Pro Boards? Just in case anyone's not sure.
Well, I wonder if that's part of the question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that forms part of it, I think. So we'll start with Adam.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a fan of Pro Boards, but it doesn't get used as much as I would hope. So again, it's like do people really know what the Pro Boards thing is? I remember when I joined it, when we moved from one thing to another, it wasn't easy to join. So I think again, it does come back to what how we communicate these things. Being a member, one of the benefits is you can get onto this board where you can talk to the Don's Trust board, directly, and then it's kind of encouraging people to use it. Lots of digital services are only used if people are there doing things, and so it's down to probably the board to start utilizing it in a specific way and having that direct communication, obviously with fans, and in particular distant fans. That's a great place for it to be housed. Obviously it's for members, so it has a level of privacy, which is great. So I guess it's just, again, it's about communicating what it's for, how we best utilize it. Because we know, there's been lots of conversations in other spaces, Facebook, Twitter. I don't use either of those services. I don't know what those conversations are. So I guess the first thing is to get more members in. They can utilize that particular board so that we can have those proper conversations with the wider group. And again, it comes back to that idea of getting diverse voices in. So, yeah. I don't know if that answers
the question.
But... Freddie?
Yeah, so obviously I'd be in favor of more people knowing about Pro Boards and using Pro Boards, because I think, as we've discussed at length, the art and the science of being a board member and being a board is to have constant real-time communication with the folks you represent, and in this case it's all the members of the Don's Trust, and so I think Pro Boards certainly promotes that. I think the second is it speaks again to this need and opportunity to simplify. We've talked about it before. There's 3 places where folks interact with the board. There's every social media platform. There's a Don Trust board seal. There's the AFC Wimbledon seal. There's 3 websites. And I think one of the ways to promote communication, which I think is fundamentally what the question gets at, is to simplify these platforms as much as possible.
I'll just clarify. Yeah, so Pro Boards, for anyone not watching, not sure, it's like our online forum, isn't it, for Don's Trust members that they can sign up to and discuss and ask questions of the Don's Trust board itself. It is a private forum, isn't it? You have to log in for it to happen. And that link is sent out to all new members, I think.
All new members, or on request via the secretary.
Thank you, George.
Brian?
Back to one website, one club. It should be easier to find. It is somewhat buried away. It takes several clicks to get on, so not everybody reads everything they're sent when they join something. You accept that. It comes back to also just around structure and process. If you go on Pro Boards, there's general for the board, and there's just too much in a general hopper. And if we had a structure whereby people could ask more questions in a focused way, so this is back to working groups and how they report and degree of transparency, that would also take some of the pressure off some of the board members. So I'm in favour of them being used more. Anybody who's tried to look me up, they'll know that I don't do social media. I've only got LinkedIn, but I do use the Pro Boards because that's meant to be the way to communicate with the board and to refer questions to them.
Dennis?
I can only say I've never heard of Pro Board until today.
There we go.
So there's your answer. Unknown. Can't say anything more.
Chris?
So, I think that's quite telling, generally, and I think that I'm absolutely certain that Dennis is very far from being alone in that amongst the Don's Trust membership. It isn't very highly used, and I think it's not enough used. If that's the communication channel that the Don's Trust board has decided, then the Don's Trust board and all of its members need to engage on it, on a regular basis as part of their everyday duties, if you like, as part of being on the board. I think that the idea I'm on there, and there are questions for candidates on there at the moment. And I'm doing my best to keep up with them. I think I'm a bit behind at the moment, but I know that some others have been answering questions on there as well, and that's a place you can ask questions. You can also ask me questions anywhere you like, really, in the ground or on Facebook, on the Facebook group, or on my Twitter. Chris for DTB.
Just that's KR.
That is KRIS,
Did 4 digit.
the number 4,
Yeah.
and then DTB with an at the front. For those of you who aren't. But I think that, you know, in all seriousness, the thing about communications, and this does come back, as Graham said, I think, to communications is I think as Freddie said, is communications is there is never a silver bullet. There is never one way that will work for everybody. You know, Pro Boards works for people who like message boards. Facebook works for people who like Facebook. Twitter works for people who like Twitter. TikTok works for people who like TikTok. YouTube works for people who like YouTube. Some of those people are the same. Some of them are different. And if the Don's Trust Board wants to engage properly with all of its membership, it needs to do all of those things a lot, all the time, and it still won't happen completely. But absolutely, if the Don's Trust Board has chosen Pro Boards as its particular formal way, then it should be absolutely part of the AFC Wimbledon presence on the web, in the way that's been mentioned, and B, should absolutely be part of the duty of every Don's Trust Board member to engage there.
Mark?
A little bit like Dennis, until last Saturday I'd never ever heard of Pro Boards. I've then gone through an experience of trying to register for it. Wasn't easy. I am now registered, and I've been trying to go through it and make head nor tail of it. I think as Graham says, do you know what? Things like that, why are there not links through the AFC Wimbledon website to be able to get to information? As individuals, we all use different types of social media. Surely we should be able to have a central repository for comms that we can click on links to our chosen way of trying to find out more information. I'm certainly going to be looking a bit more on Pro Boards now, and if I'm elected, then I will use it as a source going forward. One, to listen to what people have got to say, but also secondly, to try and communicate to people as well.
Thank you for that. So, penultimate question we've had so far. Peter Bowles wants to know, in your view, what's the primary purpose of the Don's Trust, and how do you see that changing, or how would you like to see it change over the next 2, 5, 10 years? I think we'll start with Adam here.
Sure. I think, again, for me, its primary purpose is to drive the ethos of the club and to showcase what we're about, and not to get so involved in the operational avenue, but to represent. So for me, it's outreach, it's taking the brand forward, and then helping to put in place the proper operational procedures outside of the board to make the backroom of the club and the first team function properly. So I think we're at a great place now going forward to really transform the Don's Trust Board into something that is dynamic, energising, and really drives the brand of AFC Wimbledon for its owners.
Thank you. So, Freddie?
Yeah, so I think this is a nice way to sort of start to get to the close here, because I think, like we began with, the next phase of the journey for the Don's Trust Board and the club, I think, is fundamentally the board represents its constituents, and in this case it's the fans who are the owners of the club. And I think the best way to ensure that the fans continue to have ownership of the club and drive the direction of the club is to ensure that the club is on strong business footing, which is why I personally am excited about running, because I believe I have experience that can help. And specifically as it relates to the business, I think there are 3 ways, and whether you say problems or opportunities for the board to tackle. I think the first is resolving the 4.6 million pounds of debt that are coming up next year. And I believe I can be helpful with that, because this year alone I've raised $250 million for media and technology investments. I think the second thing is to help bring professionalized sort of leadership to supplement the other great experiences of the board. And I think, I've been a senior executive at 2 of the largest media organizations in the U.S. And then finally, I think it's to come up with new revenue streams so that the club brings in more revenue and can spend more on the day-to-day operations of the club. And as someone who has sort of led financial statements of hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm excited about, I think, given the base that the club has, to be able to pursue new opportunities in media and internationally. And so I think what I'm describing at length is, I think one of the fundamental roles of the Don's Trust Board is to help grow the club from a financial standpoint, because I think that helps every opportunity we talked about today become more likely.
Right.
Agree with that. In the main, the board represents the constituency, which is the fans who own the club. Primary purpose has to be one of strategic and oversight, not of operational, although there's going to be a period of time where we have to roll our sleeves up. That's the hybrid business model. I'm glad to hear that Freddie's got 4.6 million down the back of his sofa. I'll be speaking to him at the end of this. But joking aside, every decision that the board makes has to be viewed through the prism of, is it going to make us more financially sustainable? Because financial sustainability is the best way to maintain the current model and keep us fans owned.
Dennis?
I think the main thing is we've got to get the members to see what they want from their trust. We'll always be there as their body to actually make certain that things get done. And something which has obviously come out from what Freddie was saying is this: if Freddie doesn't get on as a Don's Trust member or executive, I think we set up a funding department for media, and Freddie can head it, because if he can get this sort of money, that's the sort of expertise we want as part of this club. And the Don's Trust membership should say, we want people like Freddie to come in and actually help us to go out to these places and get the funding. He doesn't necessarily have to sit on the board. We should actually
But to be clear, I'd love to.
because we would
That's sort of why we're here today, Dennis.
I know, but I'd rather co-opt you to come in and do it and get the money if you don't get on.
There you go.
You're getting involved either way.
Correct me if I'm wrong, George, but I think the question was, what's the purpose of the Don's Trust rather than what's the purpose of the Don's Trust Board? Yeah. But we're doing a pitch in this bit, so I'll do mine as well. But I think the primary purpose of the Don's Trust is to bring together people who want to have a successful, sustainable, long-term, community-focused football club, and want to work together to that aim, to that end, to do all of the things that we do, including putting footballers out there on the pitch, but all the other teams, everything else that we do, the foundation, Don's Local Action Group, and everything that's done under the banner of the Don's Trust. But it's that bringing together that collective effort. I think that as far as the board's concerned, I think someone mentioned earlier oversight, and I think one of the things that where that line between strategy and operations is crossed is in that oversight. So, for example, we've got the Don's Trust Board having said that there will be an inquiry into what happened with the ticketing system. It hasn't started yet. I think I've made clear in my manifesto that not only needs to happen, but it needs to happen as openly as possible and as transparently as possible, and members need to know what's happened and need to know it in a timely fashion, and we need to take the action that comes out of whatever that report is, no matter how tricky that might be for us. Again, what's that line between operational and strategy? The Don's Trust Board determined in February 2015, I know because I was there, that this club should be a London Living Wage club. And we were asked the question again in the most recent survey. And I think the answer was very clear, and hopefully the Don's Trust Board's got that message. And, whether I'm a member of it in future or not, we will actually make that happen. But that's an instruction that needs to go from the Don's Trust Board to the club. I think that's part of our strategy, if you like, as well as being somewhere where we go. But ensuring that there's accountability, so we have openness, we have transparency. It talks about making sure that people understand what's going on in those Don's Trust Board meetings, making sure they know who's said what and who's voted for what, and that's something that I personally will commit to. Making sure that people know what I've said, people will know how I have voted, and something that's come up during this election so far actually is that. The fantastic work that you guys from 9 Years do is really, giving up your time and all the efforts that you put into it is fantastic. But we know now that there's an election next November. So this election will be over on December the 5th. So the planning for the next election needs to start this election will be over on December the 4th.
Yes.
Planning for the next election needs to start on December the 5th. And again, if I'm elected, I'll be pushing the Don's Trust Board to make sure that planning does start.
Ultimately, primary purpose of the Dons Trust Board is to be guardians of this football club, its history and its future, and we're elected by the members of the Dons Trust to be those guardians. Underneath that, it's all about being strategic, forward-thinking, listening to our members and what people around us are saying about the club, what they want, what they would like to see, considering what the art of the possible is. It's about being sustainable, growing both organically and by other means, and ultimately with the Dons Trust Board is about being professional, and sometimes unfortunately we haven't always seen professionalism and we need to do that. So to me that's the primary purpose going forward.
So last question for this morning's session. We are running a bit late, so if we could keep this one quite concise. It's from Mike Hasty. He says, looking at social media, there's a bit of a divide in the fan base on what our aims as a club should be. So he wants to know very briefly, how do we unite the fan base? I'll start with Adam online.
I think briefly it's communication,
Isn't it? Get people involved, hear from them, you know, and then go from there. I don't think there's a divide. I think we're having honest, open conversations about things that are coming up. And obviously the big thing that's coming up is the money that we need to get this debt down, you know, and so that's opened up some conversations, which is great. So I think it's more communication, get more people involved, know why it's great to be in the Dons Trust.
Freddie.
Yeah, so at risk of sounding like a broken record, I think, two things. One, democracy is messy, and I think when you're fan-owned, it's messy, but it's a great system, and I think the debate reflects what the intent of the ownership structure is. Second is, I think if you grow the pie, everybody wins. Everybody's goals can be met. The club can be better on the pitch. Fan ownership can be retained. And so, where I'm hyper-focused, at least I spend my time, is how do you make the pie bigger? How do you grow revenue so that you can reinvest back into the club?
Grant?
I would agree with several of the comments already. Our aims, to remain fan-owned, because we're a democracy. The only way that should be given up, as Chris had said, is if the majority of fans are in favour of that not being the case. I don't disagree at all, as you can probably guess, with everything, every decision we make to drive us towards financial sustainability, to increase the pie, and we should not be totally focused on just the first team, although we should have a goal to be into the championship within a given number of years, but we should always try and be one indivisible club rooted in our community.
Dennis?
Basically, what everybody said, I just go to say that we're one club. We should pull in all in the same direction. We shouldn't be offsetting. If you've got an issue, come to the board, tell them what's going, what they feel. You've got this pro board, use it. I'll try and use it. All I can say is that I will see this club through and through and keep it as a fan base and listen to the fans.
Chris?
I think, making sure that everyone's talking to everyone, making sure the board's communicating with people, consistently, everywhere, in every possible forum, in every possible way, finding a way, and we've done some great work so far in terms of hybrid meetings, finding a way to make that better, to involve people, because that's how you bring people together, is to make sure that people disagree, and that's great, as Freddie says, that is democracy, that is the point. Part of the point of what we're doing here is to make sure that we bring together everybody's views. We need to do that obviously in a way that's respectful and decent and so on. And the best way of doing that is being open, accountable, transparent, so that nobody has any reason to think there's anything going on behind closed doors, that something they don't understand, or something they're not being included in, etc., and that accountability is there. So when people do well, like our fantastic staff here have done well, the extraordinary efforts that, for example, people working tickets have done to overcome the failings of what was done. People can see that and they respond to that and they respect that. So just keep keep talking to everyone. Don't try and think that you can stop. There's never going to stop. You're not going to stop people disagreeing. You're not going to stop people arguing. You're not going to stop people having a different view, and neither should you try. But let's have those open, transparent discussions everywhere, all the time.
And Mark.
Don't really think there's a lot more that I can add other than what's already been said. I scribbled down a few notes on communication, whether it's a football club, whether it's a large pension scheme, whether it's politicians, dare I say the word, communications and engagement is really, really important, and so many people fail in that. You always have to look around, see what others are doing, and try and take the best bits of what they're doing and implement it in how you do things. But we also have to be open to diverse views, because there are very, very diverse views around how a football club should be run, what the starting 11 should be on a Saturday afternoon, what beer the club should be serving behind the bars, etc., etc. We may not always agree to it, but we've got to be open to the diverse views, and that people will not always agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. That is our time. So I'll just round up with some important information. Which camera shall I look in, Stu? That one. Okay, right. So a few things to get through. So 5 places are up for election. We have 12 candidates. Ballot forms were sent out yesterday. I think for the overwhelming majority of Don's Trust members, that is done electronically, so you already have that in the email. You have the voting period closes on the 4th of December. Results will be announced as soon as possible after that. So Saturday, 4th of December should be the day we host either Gillingham or Cheltenham in the FA Cup. You can choose which opposition manager you'd rather visit on that day. I think that's it. So I'll just say thank you to our candidates this morning, starting with Adam, who joined us remotely, and then Freddie, Graham, Dennis, Chris and Mark. Thank you very much. Huge thank you to George for doing whatever he does, for Stu sorting out, making sure this is all broadcasted to you, and for Rob Boyce, who's been on the cameraman duties as well. Thank you all. Don't forget, if you would like to watch this back again, it will remain on demand on our YouTube channel, youtube.co.uk/9wireless podcast, and you can send a message out to anyone that wasn't able to watch it live that they can do that as well. And I think that is it. Thank you again to everyone, and we'll be back at about midday